It was an unusually brisk autumn evening in New York City, where the golden leaves spiraled through the streets like confetti, caught in the chilling winds. Jamal Green had just finished a long day working at a local diner, the type of place that always smelled like bacon grease and coffee, no matter what time of day. Jamal wasn't well off by any means, but he wasn't bitter about his life either. A simple man with a deep love for his community, he often found joy in the smallest things, the sound of the city's heartbeat, the laughter of children, and the fleeting moments of kindness between strangers. Jamal was on his way home when he spotted something unusual from across the street. A sleek black Mercedes was parked haphazardly, with its driver, a well-dressed woman in her early 40s, pacing frantically beside it. She was visibly distressed, her face pale as if she'd just seen a ghost. Jamal's first instinct was to mind his own business, but something tugged at his heart. This woman clearly needed help. He crossed the street and approached cautiously. "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman looked at him with wide, startled eyes, as if unsure whether to be relieved or afraid. I don't know what happened. The car just stopped. It's not starting, and I have an important meeting to get to. I can't be late." Her polished accent and expensive clothes told Jamal she was wealthy. Probably used to a life of privilege and ease. He figured she was the type who didn't deal with everyday problems like broken-down cars. Still, she was clearly in distress, and Jamal had been raised to help those in need, no matter who they were. "Let me take a look," Jamal said, rolling up his sleeves. He wasn't a mechanic by trade, but growing up in a tough neighborhood had taught him a thing or two about fixing things on the fly. Within minutes, Jamal had popped the hood and located the issue, a loose wire in the ignition system. He fiddled with it, twisting it back into place. "Try it now," he suggested. The woman slid into the driver's seat, still shaking, and turned the key. The engine roared to life as if nothing had ever been wrong. She stared at Jamal, utterly dumbfounded. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to thank you. I was completely helpless." "It's nothing," Jamal said with a shrug. "Just glad I could help. You should be good to go now." The woman, still flustered but grateful, introduced herself. "My name is Victoria Montgomery. I really don't know what I would have done without you. Please, let me pay you for your help." Jamal waved her off. "No need for that. Just doing what anyone would have done." But as he turned to leave, Victoria stepped forward, insistently pressing $100 bill into his hand. "Please, take it. I insist." Reluctantly, Jamal accepted it, though he felt uncomfortable. It wasn't about the money for him, and something about the transaction made him uneasy. Nevertheless, they parted ways, and Jamal walked home, thinking nothing more of the event. The next morning, Jamal's phone rang while he was getting ready for work. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hesitant, he picked it up. "Hello? Is this Jamal Green?" A voice asked, formal and clipped. "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Robert Sterling, attorney for Montgomery Enterprises. You have been requested to meet with Victoria Montgomery today at 2 p.m. at our office." Jamal blinked in confusion. Victoria? The woman from the street? Why would she want to meet with him? This had to be some kind of mistake. "I think you've got the wrong guy," Jamal started to say, but the voice on the other end cut him off. "No, Mr. Green. Mrs. Montgomery was quite specific. Please be prompt. The call ended abruptly. Jamal stared at the phone, his heart racing. Something was definitely off. Why would a woman as wealthy and connected as Victoria Montgomery want anything to do with a regular guy like him? Nevertheless, curiosity gnawed at him. Against his better judgment, Jamal decided to go. At exactly 2 p.m., Jamal entered the towering skyscraper that housed Montgomery Enterprises, feeling more out of place than he ever had in his life. The security guard eyed him up and down as if he didn't belong there, but after a brief exchange, Jamal was led to the top floor. He stepped into an opulent office suite with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. There, seated behind a massive oak desk, was Victoria, looking as composed and regal as ever. Jamal, she greeted him warmly, standing up to offer a handshake. I'm so glad you came. Jamal shook her hand, still bewildered. What's this all about? Victoria motioned for him to sit, and as he did, she sighed deeply. Yesterday, you did more than just fix my car. You reminded me that not everyone in this city is as self-serving as I've grown used to. I've spent my life surrounded by people who only care about money, power, and status. Your kindness, your genuine act of helping a stranger without asking for anything in return, it shook me. Jamal was speechless, unsure of where this conversation was heading. I've been thinking a lot, she continued, her voice heavy with emotion. I've been given so much in life, but I've done so little with it to truly help others. You showed me what it means to care for people, and I want to do something about it. She slid a folder across the table. I've decided to start a foundation, a charity that will support underprivileged communities in the city, particularly young men like yourself. I want you to help me run it. Jamal's eyes widened. Wait. What? You want me to run a foundation? I know it sounds insane, Victoria admitted, her eyes glistening with sincerity. But you have the heart for it. I've had the resources for so long, but I lack the understanding of what it truly means to struggle. You don't. Together, I think we can change lives. Jamal sat back, reeling. It was all too much. He was a simple man, working paycheck to paycheck. And now this woman was asking him to lead a charitable foundation. He didn't know the first thing about running something so big, and yet, a part of him was intrigued by the idea. Before he could respond, the door burst open, and an older man stormed in. Victoria, what is this nonsense? He barked. Jamal recognized him from business magazines. Jonathan Montgomery, Victoria's brother, and the CEO of their family's billion-dollar conglomerate. His face was flushed with anger. You can't just throw away family money like this. You're going to destroy us with this ridiculous charity idea. Victoria's face remained calm, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of her desk. I'm not asking for your permission, Jonathan, she said coolly. This is my decision. And it's final. Jamal watched in stunned silence as the siblings clashed. Jonathan turned to Jamal, his eyes filled with disdain. You're part of this. What are you, some kind of scam artist? I'll make sure you regret this. Victoria stood up, her voice like ice. You'll do no such thing, Jonathan. This isn't about you. It never was. Leave, now. Jonathan glared at them both before storming out of the office, slamming the door behind him. Victoria let out a shaky breath, her composed facade crumbling for a moment. "I'm sorry about that," she said softly. "My family, they don't understand. But I don't care anymore. I've made my choice." Jamal was at a loss for words. He had expected this meeting to be about a simple thank you, maybe even another token of her appreciation. But this? This was beyond anything he could have imagined. "Why me?" he finally asked, his voice quiet. Victoria looked him in the eye, her expression earnest. "Because you remind me of what truly matters in life. You have a good heart, Jamal. I don't want to do this without someone who understands that." Jamal felt the weight of her words settle on him like a blanket. After a long pause, he nodded, still unsure but willing to see where this unexpected journey would take him, and thus began a partnership that would change both their lives in ways neither of them could have ever predicted. A year later, the Green Montgomery Foundation was a thriving organization that had already made a tangible impact on the lives of thousands of young people across the city. Jamal had gone from a diner worker to a community leader, inspiring others with his humility and vision. But as much as the foundation grew, so did the rift in the Montgomery family. Jonathan had not forgotten Jamal's role in what he considered to be his sister's betrayal, and dark clouds loomed on the horizon as he plotted ways to bring down the very thing they had built. What Jamal didn't know was that his life was about to take another turn, one that would test everything he thought he knew about trust, loyalty, and the power of giving. And the day that would leave him truly speechless was yet to come. As the year wore on, the Green Montgomery Foundation gained national recognition. Newspapers and magazines ran stories about Jamal Green, the former diner worker who'd become a beacon of hope for New York's underprivileged communities. Even local television stations featured interviews with him and Victoria, hailing them as a modern-day duo of philanthropy. The foundation wasn't just about donating money, they were on the ground, building youth centers, funding scholarships, creating job opportunities, and launching mentorship programs for people who had once felt invisible in the bustling city. But Jamal's sudden rise to prominence brought more than just praise, it brought scrutiny. The corporate world, led by Jonathan Montgomery, was skeptical of Victoria's philanthropic mission, viewing it as a misguided detour from the ruthless business acumen she'd once been known for. Jonathan, Victoria's older brother, couldn't shake his fury. He saw the foundation not as a lifeline for the community but as an insult to everything the Montgomery family had built. Their father's legacy, as Jonathan saw it, was built on power and influence. And Victoria was squandering it with this charity. Jamal, for all the good he was doing, was about to become an unwitting pawn in a dangerous game of wealth, power, and deception. One evening, after a long day of meetings with city officials about expanding the foundation's reach, Jamal decided to take a walk through his old neighborhood. It had been months since he'd walked these streets, and everything felt eerily different. The corner bodega where he used to grab breakfast sandwiches was now closed, and the apartment building he had grown up in was half boarded up. But the memories flooded him, his childhood, the struggles, and the people who had come and gone. As he walked, he heard a voice call out to him, "Yo, Jamal. Is that you?" Turning around, he saw Marcus, an old friend from his younger days, leaning against a graffitied wall. Marcus was a hustler, sharp, quick-witted, and always looking for the next opportunity to make some money, legal or not. He and Jamal had been close once, though their lives had taken drastically different paths. Marcus. Jamal smiled, genuinely glad to see him. They exchanged a quick handshake-hug combo, but something felt off. Marcus's eyes were darting around, and his smile seemed forced. "I've been hearing about you, man. Mr. Big Time now, huh? Working with the rich folks and all that, Marcus said, his tone half joking, half serious. Jamal chuckled, though the words stung more than he wanted to admit. Nah, man. Just trying to give back, you know. Helping where I can. Yeah. I hear that, Marcus nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. But, listen, a word of advice. Them rich folks you working with, they ain't all on your side, bro, watch your back. I'm hearing things. Jamal frowned, his mood shifting. What kind of things? Marcus looked around, lowering his voice. Look, I ain't trying to scare you or nothing, but I know how these people play the game. Word is, Victoria's brother, Jonathan, got it out for you. He's been talking to people, powerful people. And I'm hearing they want to make sure this whole foundation thing blows up in your face. Jamal's stomach turned. Why would he care? The foundation's legit, we're helping people. Legit or not, he don't like you, Jamal. You're the face of it. And that makes you a threat. Marcus's words echoed in Jamal's mind long after they'd parted ways. He didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to think that someone would actively try to destroy something that was doing so much good. But deep down, he knew Marcus was right. Jonathan's animosity had been clear from the beginning. This wasn't just about business, it was personal. The following week, Jamal brought his concerns to Victoria. They were sitting in her office, the sun setting behind the skyscrapers, casting a golden hue across the city. Victoria, I need to ask you something, Jamal began, his voice steady but serious. She looked up from her desk, sensing the gravity of his tone. Of course, Jamal. What's on your mind? Your brother. Jonathan. Is he coming after us? After the foundation? Victoria's expression tightened. She didn't answer right away, and the silence felt heavy. Why do you ask that? She finally said, her voice cautious. Jamal hesitated but decided to be direct. I've been hearing things. From people I trust. They say Jonathan's been talking to some powerful people, people who don't like what we're doing. Is that true? Victoria sighed, leaning back in her chair, and for the first time since they'd started working together, Jamal saw a flash of vulnerability in her eyes. Jamal, my brother and I have complicated histories. Jonathan is used to being in control, and he doesn't like that I've stepped away from the family business to pursue this foundation. He sees it as a betrayal, a distraction. I'm sure he's angry, but I didn't think he'd go so far as to actively sabotage us. She paused, her gaze distant. But if what you're saying is true, then I'm afraid things may get worse before they get better. Jamal sat forward, his heart pounding. Worse how? Victoria hesitated, choosing her words carefully. The Montgomery family has connections. Jonathan knows people in high places, people who have the power to influence media, politics, and even the legal system. If he's truly set on bringing us down, he won't stop at just bad-mouthing the foundation. He could go after our finances, our reputation, even you. Me? Jamal asked, the weight of her words sinking in. Jamal, you're the face of this organization. You're the reason people believe in it. If Jonathan can discredit you, he can discredit everything we've built. The realization hit Jamal like a freight train. He had never thought of himself as important enough to be a target, but now he understood. This wasn't just about a family feud or a rich man's anger. This was about power. And in their world, power was everything. A week later, the first blow came. The New York Gazette, a prominent business newspaper, published an exposé on the Green Montgomery Foundation, accusing it of financial mismanagement. The article cited anonymous sources who claimed that millions of dollars meant for community projects had mysteriously vanished. The headline screamed, "Charity scam or incompetence." The dark side of the Green Montgomery Foundation. Jamal's phone blew up within minutes. Reporters, donors, even friends from his old neighborhood were calling, asking if the accusations were true. He felt like the ground was crumbling beneath him. He knew the article was full of lies, but in the world of media, perception was everything. The damage was done. Victoria immediately called a press conference to deny the allegations, but the story had already gained traction. Social media was ablaze with accusations and rumors. People who had once supported the foundation began to distance themselves. Major donors froze their contributions. Unsure if they wanted to be associated with a scandal, Jamal felt powerless. The foundation had become his life's work, and now it was being torn apart. He couldn't help but feel that this was his fault, that his presence, his involvement, had somehow made the foundation a target. But the worst was yet to come. A month later, in the dead of night, Jamal received a knock on his apartment door. When he opened it, 2 police officers stood there, stern and unsmiling. "Jamal Green?" One of them asked. "Yes." Jamal replied, a pit forming in his stomach. "You're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Jamal's world spun as the officers read him his rights and cuffed his wrists. His neighbors peeked out from their doors, watching in shocked silence as he was led away. The next morning, the news plastered his mugshot across every channel. The charges were serious: fraud, money laundering, and embezzling from the foundation. It was a nightmare. Victoria tried to pull every string she could to get him released on bail, but the damage was done. The media had a field day. People who had once hailed Jamal as a hero now saw him as a fraud. Sitting in his jail cell, Jamal couldn't believe how far he had fallen. Just a year ago, he had been an ordinary guy, helping a stranger on the street. Now, he was facing prison time for crimes he didn't commit. He knew in his heart that Jonathan was behind this, but proving it would be nearly impossible. Days passed, and the case against Jamal built up. The evidence was damning: bank statements, forged documents, and testimonies from supposed whistleblowers who claimed to have seen him siphoning funds. It was a well-orchestrated takedown, and Jamal had no idea how to fight it. Then, in the midst of his darkest hour, an unexpected ally emerged. Victoria wasn't done fighting. She hired a team of private investigators to dig into the allegations, determined to find the truth. What they uncovered was more shocking than either of them could have imagined: a secret offshore account, in Jamal's name, filled with millions of dollars, supposedly stolen from the foundation. But the investigators discovered that Jamal had never opened such an account. It had been created by someone else, with forged documents and an elaborate paper trail that led back to a single source: Jonathan Montgomery. Victoria confronted her brother in a high-stakes showdown that could have easily played out in a boardroom or courtroom drama. Jonathan, confident in his position, denied everything at first. But Victoria had the evidence, and she wasn't backing down. She threatened to expose not just the fraud but also the dirty dealings of Montgomery Enterprises if Jonathan didn't come clean. Under immense pressure, Jonathan finally relented. He admitted to orchestrating the entire scheme to discredit Jamal and shut down the foundation. But his confession came with a condition: Victoria had to agree not to go public with the full extent of his crimes, or else he'd use his influence to bury her alongside Jamal. Victoria, torn between bringing her brother to justice and protecting the future of the foundation, made a deal. Jonathan would withdraw the charges against Jamal. But in exchange, she wouldn't publicly ruin him. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was the only way to save Jamal. Jamal was released from jail, cleared of all charges, but the ordeal had taken its toll. Though his name was cleared legally, the court of public opinion was another matter. Many still believed the worst, and rebuilding his reputation seemed impossible. Victoria, though visibly shaken by the events, stood by his side, vowing to help restore everything they had built. Together, they reopened the foundation, albeit in a more modest form, and slowly began the long process of rebuilding trust within the community. Jamal had been speechless many times throughout the year, but nothing compared to the moment when, at a press conference, Victoria publicly announced that she was stepping down from Montgomery Enterprises entirely. "I've spent too long hiding behind the wealth and power of my family," she said, her voice unwavering. "But Jamal Green has shown me what it means to fight for something real. And I intend to keep fighting." The room erupted into stunned silence. Reporters scrambling to write down her words. It was a bombshell that no one saw coming. Victoria, once a symbol of corporate success, was walking away from it all to dedicate her life to the foundation, and as Jamal stood beside her, no longer a pawn but a partner in the truest sense, he realized that sometimes, the most powerful acts of change don't happen on the streets or in boardrooms, but in the hearts of those brave enough to stand against the tide. The ripple they had started was far from over.